everybody, welcome back to That Fiction Life. Today we are talking about Shadow and Bone. I binged all of it in one day on Friday the 23rd, which is when it released. I had to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier first because I was writing a feature about it. Friday was a big day for the internet fantasy slash superhero genre. So today's video is going to be a series discussion. I will let you know when I'm about to dive into spoilers. Okay, so let's get it out of the way. Did I love it or not? I don't think we have had such a phenomenon since Catching Fire, which was the sequel to The Hunger Games. We were all very worried about this adaptation because you had two series being included, two different plots with different characters. How was that going to be integrated? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I have a video explaining the reading order of the series and why there were two included. How is this going to work logistically? The events happen years apart and it was seamless. It's understandable why we were worried. Based on past adaptations, primarily the one beginning with S, not Shadow and Bone, obviously. I lost hope, quite honestly, when it came to fantasy adaptations particularly, because the YA genre has had some great adaptations in the contemporary scene, but when it came to things that required more of a high budget, that needed stunt work, that needed the costumes, I don't think it happened since The Hunger Games. But let me tell you, as a spoiler-free statement, I was floored. I don't want to reveal too much about the merge of Six of Crows and Shadow and Bone because it's kind of nice to discover that on your own if you're watching it. But to me, I think it was genius the way it was done. Instead of giving us two different plots, they integrated the plots to give us more of a prequel to Six of Crows, while still maintaining those Easter eggs if you've read the book so you know exactly what they're talking about. The way it was integrated, the way the characters' lives crossed over, I just thought it was so clever. So you're definitely in for a treat if you were worried about that. The pacing I thought was brilliant because a lot of the time with short seasons, 8 episodes is not a lot. For integrating two casts from a storytelling point of view, they knocked it out of the park, telling us the key moments, moving the story along without it making feel really, really rushed. I'm just so tempted to say it was even better than the book. It sort of elevated everything that was really great about the books, and the cast, I cannot even explain to you how they nailed this cast. There's not one person that I was disappointed by. They embodied their characters. Some of my favorites were definitely Jesper, Nina. I mean, Alina herself felt like she came out of the book. I'm not even going to list them. Everyone was perfect. David was like the underdog within this series. It's not someone that had a lot of screen time, but he made an impact. It's as though this cast understood the assignment. So they just felt really passionate about their characters, and it shines through because throughout the past year you could tell that they were reading the books. They understood this story and it came across on screen perfectly. Also, this series changed my mind on a lot of the characters. For example, Mal is not someone that I even paid attention to in the books. I didn't like him. He wasn't someone that stood out to me as a character in this series. But Archie Reno was perfect as Mal, and he made me care about him and his story and his personal journey. Ben Barnes as the Darkling was iconic. And a lot of people worried about the costumes. Why? Wendy Partridge has worked on Thor. She has worked on the Underworld series. She's done some incredible work. And those pictures that were leaked, listen, the color grading was wrong on them. Okay, that wasn't what we saw on screen. I think my favorite outfits were some of the more grungy looks. So definitely the sort of early episodes, the Darkling's costume definitely stood out. I have to praise the setting also. I mean, Ravka and Ketterdam and Fjerda. I cannot get over how high quality this series is. And, from a production side as well, the cinematography was beautiful. The shots looked like something out of a high budget Marvel movie or something. That's what I'm going to say for non-spoilers. So if you haven't seen the series yet, please do click off the video. I highly recommend you watch it. I had a great time. I'm going to watch it again. So as a first point, I was so emotional over Leigh Bardugo's cameo. It was so much longer than I expected. It felt like such a surreal moment for her watching that scene. She was able to hug her character. When does that ever happen? We didn't know which way this was going to go, and episode 1 I thought was such a good start to this whole universe. We didn't even meet the Darkling. We just saw this sort of silhouette of him from afar, and Alina sort of watching this boat, and from that moment I already laughed because we knew what was in store for her. I'm just thinking, you're gonna catch some feelings there, Alina. So like I said in the non-spoilers, I feel like this series really elevated a lot of things for me. For example, Mal, all of the scenes with Alina, I felt invested. I particularly loved all of the scenes where Alina and Mal are on the run, because they were sort of able to have some downtime after being away from each other for so long. And the way they tricked us that they were reunited in the cells and he went to attack that guard. We didn't know this was a dream/nightmare sequence. And seeing him run at that guard in that bar to avenge Alina, so to speak, that was a great scene, you know. The Darkling scenes, again, in the book, I thought their bond was really strange. I liked Alina and the Darkling as separate characters, but even their romantic scenes felt a little bit forced to me. In this series, they just came naturally. I think that Ben and Jessie had really good chemistry, and the progression of their relationship didn't feel that fast to me. Again, you have to realize this is only 8 episodes, and somehow it felt quite gradual. You had those moments where she's sort of looking at him thinking, oh, who is this person called Alexander? Where did that even come from? But I digress. She's sort of realizing that she likes him in a different way and she appreciates the work that he does. And then we have episode 5, which, you know, 5 episodes is quite good for us to have a relationship develop. Usually in series, you know, episode 2, they're already in bed and done over with. That did mean that their sort of switch was much faster. You know, by episode 6 she already hates him and it's a whole thing. The Darkling himself, I was so captivated by his character, and you know, everything had a part in this. It was Ben's acting, it was the directing, it was the writing, it was the set itself and the mood that you were put in whenever he was on screen. It was like a chill going through you every time he spoke, and you know, make me your villain. But then he also had those really endearing scenes with his Grisha, and you can tell that he's so passionate about this group that he has sworn to protect. And my favorite scene where that is shown is the scene with David. If I didn't have the history with the books and knowing how he operates, I would have thought he would have beat the hell out of David for letting the carriage be kidnapped by the crows. Can you kidnap a carriage? Stealing the carriage. But he full on just kind of, it was like a cinnamon roll kind of moment where he goes, you screwed up a little bit, but you know how to fix it and I respect you for that. That scene was iconic, where David put up his hand and the Darkling's like, you don't have to, okay. Luke absolutely nailed this character. He was only in 3 episodes, right? Here's the crazy part. He played quite a small part in the series, but it had such a huge impact. It was exactly the personality that I imagined for David. Everything from his smirks and his looks at Genya. If there is a season 2, I know that David is not a huge part of the books as some of the other characters, but I really hope they give him more scenes because he has such a great screen presence that we have to talk about the crows. It is absolutely imperative that I tell you how much I love the goat. Something that I think studios have caught on to is that they know audiences will latch onto the weirdest things. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is an example. Zemo doing this for 3 seconds set off a revolution on the internet, and now we have a goat that has a whole fandom around it. I love it. So Jasper was a standout for me out of the crows personally. He was such a scene stealer. Actually, Jasper's introduction into the series I think is my favourite scene out of this whole series, but it was such a standout moment and it made such an impact on the rest of the series because you knew what you were getting with him the whole time. That scene where he says, oh, there's going to be a heist when they start plotting to go and kidnap Alina. Now, something I've seen debated a lot is that the personalities of the crows have changed. Listen, if you look at all the clues, okay, Kaz doesn't have the same power. People saying, oh, why would he be overpowered? And why would anyone be able to infiltrate his office? This is not Six of Crows Ketterdam. This is a Ketterdam where Kaz was still building his empire. He doesn't have the same amount of people behind him. You know, we only had 3 of the crows in this season. Inej herself, her personality was quite different to the book, and it's because they still haven't gone through a lot of these events that defined their characters. One thing that I really wish had been included was Kaz's touch phobia, because I think that was very important for some of the scenes. The scene where Inej is attacked and he's just standing far from the side and he looks absolutely tortured at the fact that he can't help her. You have like the little snippets that he always wears gloves all the time. And you know, that makes me think that this is already a plot point, but they didn't make it clear, and I wish they had, because if you haven't read the books, you're kind of thinking he's being this broody guy and he's all mysterious and kind of being a douche. Like, why aren't you helping your best friend? There's a reason, and I wish that was highlighted more. But what I will say though about Inej and Kaz, again, if you haven't read the books, you don't know what I'm talking about here, but their bond, it was so subtle that you could have missed it, but those tiny looks, even Jasper telling Inej herself, you know, if you tell Kaz the story of what happened to you, he will go absolutely berserk. They're sowing the seeds. Something that I really appreciated about the Crows is how the Six of Crows plotlines were integrated into this new storyline. There was still a heist. It was adjusted because in the book they go on a completely different adventure. Elements of that were integrated with the whole Rollins plotline. They did go undercover. Here they infiltrated the Little Palace instead. Even Inej getting attacked, that just reminded me of that scene with Nina in the book. And so there were so many sort of parallels to, like a lot of people, I was very adamant about merging the 2 plot lines. But I think it was the right choice, because if the Crows hadn't been there, then the season would have been a lot more serious and a lot more focused on the magic, as opposed to being quite character driven, because the Crows are known for having very distinct personalities that I think added a lot to this season. Now we have to talk about Nina and Mathias. Integrating their meeting and the whole shipwreck storyline before, because right, if you look at the timelines in the, yes, this all happens within the Six of Crows book, but it's told in flashbacks. And so now we're seeing it in real time, because of course Mathias gets sent to the prison and he's there for a little while before we ever see him again. And so now we're actually seeing this happen when it actually happened, which I think is such a cool connection for the book fans. And you know, a lot of people are kind of thinking, who the hell are these 2? Why are they here? Why are they going on a cute adventure in the snow when there's a whole other plot going on? Well, you'll see. That last scene when Nina asked the Crows a question, I was like, it was the moment when you knew what was going to happen, and I'm so excited. I can't wait to see the whole gang together. I think that's going to be great. Anyway, so Nina and Mathias stole the show for me. From the first moment, actually, can we talk about the scene with the whole sleeping situation? It was exactly how I imagined it in the books. It was one of my favourite moments when I was reading, and again, it was one of the best moments in the series. The whole back and forth between Nina and Mathias, and he's kind of trying to be reserved. I love how they highlighted the different cultures that they come from. Nina's just there getting changed, she doesn't care, she's quite forward with everything, and then Mathias is like the poor sheltered child. Also, I love Nina as a character. I think she's such a badass, and my heart absolutely broke how she had to lie about who Mathias was in order to protect him. The scene in the room where they kind of accepted that they have feelings for each other. It was so heartbreaking because I knew what was happening next. This is such a random thing to point out, but I can't believe how funny the Darkling was. I mean, I can, because I did laugh a lot in the book. But in the final episode, when he kills all the people on the ship and then he says, oh, well, now I have to say my speech again. One of my favourite lines from the book made it in, apart from, you know, the usual make me your villain and no mourners, no funerals. It was the girl rides with me line. When I read that book, that stood out to me so much, and it's right at the start where Alina gets attacked by that guy and the Darkling kills him while he's kind of towering over her. Of course, she was in a carriage with the rest of the Grisha, but they can't keep her safe, so the Darkling says, "The girl rides with me." In my reading vlog of this book, I will link it down below if you would like to see it, but I just had a whole meltdown over that one line. It was so good. It felt like one of those really good punchline quotes. Like, Fedyor and Ivan are a whole mood. Again, taking it back to my reading vlog, I loved Ivan's character. I thought he was so deceitful, and now he has this whole thing with Fedyor and I'm dying. It's one of those ships that you don't expect to love and then you see it happen and you do. So did you all catch the amplifier in his hand? Didn't think that was going to be a thing, and I actually love how they integrated the amplifiers in this series. In the book, I really wasn't sure how to imagine, because the way it was described to me in the book, it felt like it was more of a necklace type of thing, right? But the way like it was within her skin, it looked so creepy, which was the whole point, because she was supposed to be a prisoner under the Darkling, and it was meant to be like an almost cage, right? And that's what it looked like. Alina in that scene when it was happening. Oh, I love Jessie as Alina. I think she was perfect. They were all perfect. I sound like a broken record at this point, but that scene really stood out to me. We have to talk about the Darkling and his little Nietzschevoya gang that he's conjuring up. The way that scene looked when he walks out of the smoke and then they're all following him. The atmosphere was so somber and he looked royally pissed off at this whole situation. The makeup team in that scene, and actually the individual scenes with him were so good. The way he looks so emotional. In so many scenes he had actual tears in his eyes, and that just, it really makes you reflect on what sort of character this is, because he has such a huge passion for the Grisha and he's willing to do the absolute worst in order to sort of free them from this reputation, because, you know, the series doesn't really delve into this, but we know how the Grisha used to be treated and how they are still treated by a lot of people. You know, Mathias, he was not it at the start of this series. I really loved the last scene of the whole gang sitting together in that field. So Alina asks, "You're not going to kidnap me now, right? We're fine." I'm obsessed with the fact that Inej feels so emotional over the fact that Alina is a sun summoner. I think that's a really, really important plot point that they need to explore a little bit more. And it really goes back again to the fact that Inej in Six of Crows doesn't really behave like this, but this is a different Inej that we're seeing more than 2 years prior to the plot of Six of Crows, and there's a lot of things that happen along the way that sort of hardened her exterior, but here she looks almost hopeful. It was really great to see. I loved how Zoya was portrayed in the series, because you really saw like the hatred between her and Alina, and it ended with that same thing. You know, they respect each other, but they're not friends, and I think those are really important relationships to show as well, because, you know, you're not going to get along with everyone, but you also can't hate them for no reason, and I think Zoya telling Alina that was very important for this plot, and I can't wait to see Zoya in the next season. Again, if we've read Siege and Storm, we know what's in store for her, and I'm absolutely just dying already just at the thought of her meeting certain characters. This season was just beyond anything that I could have anticipated. Curious to see how they're going to integrate the plot further. Are they going to completely branch out, or are they going to keep them all together? Because we know now that Nina is going to reunite, well, not reunite, they haven't met yet, but she's going to join the Crows at some point now, right? Because they're on the ship, and we had that one line between them. Alina and Mal on the run. We know what they're going to be looking for. The Darkling's going insane. This is just completely off topic, but the Darkling and Kaz, that sent me. I can't. But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.